Every betrayal begins with a smile. Every painful disappointment begins with a moment that felt completely safe. The greatest danger is rarely the person who looks dangerous. It is often the person who appears kind, confident, charming, and easy to trust. Human beings are surprisingly skilled at creating the version of themselves they want others to see. During first meetings, people naturally choose their words carefully, hide uncomfortable habits, and present their strongest qualities. That is part of human psychology. Yet behind every polished first impression is a deeper pattern that slowly reveals character. People who deserve your trust, and people who plan to use your trust, can appear almost identical during those early moments. That single truth explains why intelligent people still fall into unhealthy friendships, toxic relationships, and costly business partnerships. Real character is hidden inside repeated behavior, emotional reactions, and subtle habits that most people overlook because attention stays focused on charm instead of patterns. Psychology calls this impression management. People consciously and unconsciously shape the way others see them. At the same time, our minds form quick judgments within seconds, a process known as thin slicing. Sometimes those instant judgments are surprisingly accurate. Sometimes they are completely wrong, because confidence, appearance, and smooth communication create an illusion of honesty. Learning the difference between genuine character and carefully managed behavior can change every relationship in your life. During this video, you will discover powerful psychological principles that help you read people long before trust becomes a risk. You will learn why actions always reveal more than words, why small inconsistencies deserve quiet attention, why emotional reactions expose hidden personality traits, and why the way someone treats strangers often says more about them than the way they treat friends. You will also discover subtle signs that experienced observers notice almost immediately, while everyone else remains distracted by charm and confidence. Some of these ideas come from well-established psychological research. Others are practical observations used by investigators, negotiators, and behavioral experts whose work depends on understanding human behavior with remarkable accuracy. Each lesson builds upon the previous one, giving you a clearer way to recognize honesty, manipulation, emotional maturity, and genuine respect before placing your confidence in another person. Stay with us until the very end, because the final lesson brings everything together into one simple principle that can protect your relationships, your peace of mind, and even your future decisions. Once you begin seeing these hidden patterns, ordinary conversations start revealing extraordinary information. Faces become less important than behavior. Promises become less important than consistency. Charm becomes less important than character. That shift can completely transform the way you choose friends, partners, coworkers, and every person who enters your life. Welcome to our channel, where psychology becomes practical knowledge you can use every day. If you enjoy learning how human behavior truly works and want deeper insights that help you make wiser decisions, subscribe to our channel and join us as we uncover the hidden signals that people reveal long before they earn your trust. One of the biggest mistakes people make is giving more value to words than to behavior. Words are easy to create because they cost very little. A person can promise loyalty, kindness, honesty, respect, or support within a few seconds. Speaking requires very little effort. Living according to those promises is a completely different challenge. Behavior demands time, discipline, sacrifice, and personal values. That is why actions always carry more weight than conversations. Someone may tell you they care about your well-being, yet disappear every time you need help. Another person may speak very little, yet quietly stand beside you whenever life becomes difficult. The first person creates comfort through language. The second creates trust through behavior. Psychology has repeatedly shown that lasting trust grows from repeated experiences rather than attractive statements. Every action becomes another piece of evidence. Every decision adds another page to the story of who someone truly is. This is where behavioral consistency becomes one of the strongest indicators of character. Real personality is difficult to hide over a long period because habits naturally repeat themselves. A generous person usually remains generous across different situations. A respectful person continues showing respect even during disagreements. Someone with strong integrity follows the same principles, whether others are watching or whether nobody will ever know. Consistency removes the need for constant explanation because behavior begins speaking on its own. People who constantly explain why they deserve trust often rely on words to fill the gap left by inconsistent actions. Their stories may sound convincing, yet their daily choices slowly reveal a different reality. Paying attention to those repeated choices gives you a far clearer understanding than listening to another promise. Promises create hope, yet hope alone cannot predict future behavior. Every relationship begins with expectations. Friends promise support. Partners promise commitment. Business associates promise honesty. Those promises create confidence during the early stages because everyone wants to believe the best about another person. Still, promises only become meaningful after they are supported by repeated action. A single helpful gesture may simply reflect a good mood. Real character appears when similar actions continue during ordinary days, stressful moments, and uncomfortable situations. Anyone can behave well for a short period. Maintaining that behavior month after month requires genuine values rather than temporary effort. This is why experienced observers pay less attention to dramatic declarations and more attention to ordinary routines. Small daily habits often predict future behavior better than emotional speeches ever could. Another powerful way to understand someone is by observing them across different environments. Human behavior changes depending on circumstances, yet core values usually remain stable. Someone may appear polite during a formal meeting because social expectations encourage respectful behavior. The same individual may become impatient during a long wait, dismissive toward service workers, or dishonest when personal gain becomes possible. These moments provide valuable information because pressure reduces the ability to maintain a carefully managed image. Different environments reveal different sides of personality. Watching how someone behaves with family, close friends, strangers, coworkers, or people who hold less influence offers a much broader picture than relying on one pleasant conversation. Patterns become clearer each time circumstances change. Another detail that often escapes attention is the gap between private behavior and public behavior. Some people perform kindness whenever others are watching because approval becomes a reward. Once attention disappears, their priorities suddenly change. Others remain dependable regardless of recognition because their behavior comes from personal principles rather than public image. This difference is subtle, yet extremely important. A person who acts with integrity only during moments of visibility is protecting a reputation. A person who behaves well even without praise is protecting personal values. Behavioral consistency grows strongest when external rewards disappear. That is why quiet moments often reveal more truth than public moments. Time also plays a powerful role in exposing genuine character. At first, almost everyone pays careful attention to making a positive impression. They choose the right words, display patience, and avoid conflict whenever possible. As weeks and months pass, maintaining that polished version becomes increasingly difficult. Habits begin replacing careful performance. Emotional reactions become more spontaneous. Priorities become easier to recognize. The person who claimed honesty either continues telling the truth during difficult situations or begins making excuses when honesty becomes uncomfortable. The person who promised respect either maintains that respect during disagreement or abandons it when emotions rise. Slowly, repeated behavior removes uncertainty, allowing real character to replace first impressions with reliable evidence. One of the clearest ways to understand a person's character is to observe how they treat people who offer them very little in return. This moment rarely receives attention because people naturally focus on how someone behaves toward friends, family, or important individuals. Yet genuine personality becomes easier to recognize when there is no reward waiting at the end of a conversation. Every social interaction carries a choice. A person can offer respect because it reflects personal values, or they can offer respect because they expect something valuable in return. That difference may appear small, yet it reveals a great deal about motivation. Someone who treats every person with basic dignity usually carries that attitude as part of their identity. Someone whose kindness changes according to status is often responding to opportunity rather than compassion. The real test begins when nobody important seems to be watching, and nothing valuable can be gained. Civil situations often reveal this better than dramatic events. Pay attention during ordinary moments that most people ignore. Watch how someone speaks to a waiter after receiving the wrong meal. Notice their tone with a cleaner working quietly in the background. Listen to the patience they show an older person who needs extra time to speak or move. Observe how they respond to a child asking innocent questions. Even brief exchanges with strangers can uncover habits that remain hidden during formal conversations. Some people maintain warmth regardless of who stands in front of them. Others suddenly become impatient, dismissive, or disrespectful as soon as they believe the other person holds little influence over their life. These reactions happen almost automatically because there is less pressure to protect a carefully managed image. Psychologists often connect these behaviors to social dominance and empathy. Social dominance reflects the tendency to view relationships through levels of power and status. A person strongly influenced by this mindset may naturally divide people into those who deserve attention and those who do not. They become highly respectful toward managers, wealthy individuals, or anyone who could improve their position, while offering very little consideration to people they consider less important. Their behavior changes with the environment, because respect becomes a strategy rather than a principle. Empathy works differently. An empathetic person recognizes the feelings and humanity of others, regardless of occupation, age, appearance, or social position. Respect comes from understanding shared human experience instead of calculating personal advantage. This difference becomes especially clear in environments where service is expected. A restaurant, hotel, airport, or store creates dozens of opportunities for genuine character to appear. Delays happen, mistakes happen. Stress builds naturally. During those moments, someone who believes every person deserves dignity usually remains calm, even while expressing frustration respectfully. Another person may quickly become demanding, sarcastic, or insulting because they believe authority gives them permission to treat others poorly. Their words become sharper. Their facial expressions change. Their patience disappears. These moments often reveal attitudes that remain hidden during comfortable conversations. Pressure simply removes the filter that normally keeps those attitudes out of sight. Another important distinction exists between authentic kindness and performative kindness. Genuine kindness continues whether anyone notices or not. It appears in quiet actions that bring little recognition. Holding a door for someone carrying heavy bags, speaking patiently with an elderly stranger, thanking a cleaner for their work, or showing understanding toward an exhausted employee may never receive praise, yet those actions reflect stable values. Performative kindness looks different. It often appears when attention is guaranteed. A person may suddenly become generous in front of friends, record acts of charity for public approval, or speak warmly only when admiration is likely to follow. Once the audience disappears, so does the kindness. Their behavior depends upon visibility rather than conviction. People rarely maintain two completely different personalities forever. Given enough ordinary interactions, patterns begin forming with remarkable clarity. Respect offered only to powerful individuals, warmth reserved only for useful relationships, and politeness that disappears whenever personal benefit fades all point toward motivations driven by status instead of character. Meanwhile, steady patience, consistent courtesy, and quiet compassion toward people who can offer nothing in return usually reveal values that remain stable across every part of life. These everyday moments may appear insignificant on their own, yet together they tell a story that polished words and confident first impressions can never fully hide. Pressure has a unique way of revealing parts of a person's personality that remain hidden during calm and comfortable moments. Almost anyone can appear patient, polite, and understanding when everything is going well. A pleasant conversation over coffee or a successful day at work requires very little emotional effort. Real character begins to appear when plans suddenly change, expectations fall apart, or unexpected problems demand an immediate response. These situations place the mind under stress, reducing the ability to carefully manage behavior. The polite smile becomes harder to maintain. Carefully chosen words become more spontaneous. Automatic habits take control because the brain focuses on solving the problem instead of protecting an image. That is why stressful moments often provide a far more accurate picture of someone's personality than peaceful ones. A single difficult situation may reveal emotional patterns that months of smooth conversations never expose. Psychologists describe this ability to manage feelings during pressure as emotional regulation. It is the skill of recognizing emotions without allowing them to completely control behavior. Emotional regulation does not mean someone never feels anger, disappointment, fear, or frustration. Every healthy person experiences those emotions. The difference lies in how those emotions are handled. An emotionally mature person feels the same stress as everyone else, yet creates enough space between feeling and action to choose a thoughtful response. That small pause often separates wisdom from regret. Instead of reacting immediately, they observe the situation, consider different possibilities, and speak with purpose. This habit protects relationships because problems are approached with clarity instead of emotional intensity. Emotionally reactive people often follow a very different pattern. Stress quickly becomes visible through raised voices, impatient words, defensive attitudes, or impulsive decisions. Small inconveniences grow into personal attacks. Minor disagreements become major conflicts. Rather than focusing on solving the issue, attention shifts toward releasing emotional tension as quickly as possible. This may provide temporary relief, yet it often creates new problems that remain long after the original situation has passed. People who regularly react this way may later apologize sincerely, yet the pattern repeats because the underlying habit has never changed. Their emotions become the leader, while judgment struggles to keep up. Observing this pattern over time tells you far more about future behavior than listening to promises about changing. Anger deserves special attention because it frequently exposes deeper beliefs about responsibility and control. Anger itself is a natural human emotion. The important question is where that anger is directed and how it is expressed. Some people use anger as information. They recognize something feels wrong and work toward a solution without attacking others. Others use anger as permission to blame, insult, threaten, or dominate. During stressful situations, they immediately search for someone else to hold responsible. Personal accountability becomes difficult because protecting the ego feels more important than understanding the problem. This habit often appears in everyday situations, such as traffic delays, mistakes at work, or unexpected disappointments. Instead of adapting, they become trapped in frustration, believing every difficult experience must be caused by someone else's failure. Panic also reveals valuable information about emotional habits. Unexpected events naturally create uncertainty, yet emotionally steady people usually slow themselves down before making important decisions. They gather information, ask questions, and avoid unnecessary assumptions. Emotionally reactive individuals often move in the opposite direction. Their minds rush toward the worst possible outcome. Decisions become faster but less thoughtful. Fear begins shaping reality before facts have been fully understood. This pattern can spread anxiety throughout relationships because every challenge feels larger than it truly is. Over time, those around them may begin walking carefully, trying to avoid triggering another emotional reaction rather than communicating openly. Calm responses should never be confused with weakness or a lack of emotion. Remaining calm during pressure requires tremendous self-control because the mind naturally wants immediate relief. Choosing thoughtful words while emotions are intense demands discipline that develops through repeated practice. Calm people still recognize unfair treatment, disappointment, and conflict. The difference is that they refuse to let temporary emotions decide permanent actions. They understand that strong feelings eventually pass, while careless words and impulsive choices can leave lasting damage. This quiet form of strength often goes unnoticed because it lacks drama, yet it creates stability that others naturally trust. Over time, people with strong emotional regulation become predictable in the best possible way. Their behavior remains steady across changing circumstances, making their character easier to understand, because pressure reveals the same thoughtful habits again and again. One of the most reliable ways to understand whether someone is being truthful is to pay attention to small inconsistencies instead of waiting for dramatic mistakes. Popular movies often create the impression that deception is exposed by one obvious clue, such as avoiding eye contact or becoming unusually nervous. Real life is usually much more subtle. People who hide the truth often prepare their words carefully, making large mistakes less common than most expect. The real clues appear in small details that slowly drift away from one another over time. A date changes slightly, a conversation is described differently, An important detail disappears from the story, while a new one suddenly appears without explanation. Each individual difference may seem harmless, yet together, they begin to form a pattern that deserves careful attention. Observant people understand that truth usually remains stable, while deception often requires constant adjustment. Psychologists explain part of this process through the idea of cognitive load. Telling the truth is generally simpler because it comes from memory. Inventing or hiding information demands much more mental effort. A person must remember the original story, keep track of every detail already shared, avoid revealing information they want to hide, and make sure new statements fit with previous ones. As this mental pressure increases, maintaining perfect consistency becomes increasingly difficult. Small contradictions begin to appear because the brain is managing several tasks at the same time. These inconsistencies are usually unplanned. They emerge naturally as the effort of maintaining a false version of events grows heavier. This is why skilled investigators and behavioral experts often focus less on dramatic emotional displays and more on the stability of a person's story across multiple conversations. Changes in a story deserve attention because genuine memories usually remain consistent at their core, even when small details naturally fade with time. Someone recalling a real experience may describe certain moments differently during separate conversations, yet the central events usually remain the same. A deceptive story often changes in more significant ways. Important timelines shift, reasons suddenly become different. People who were once present disappear from the story, while new individuals unexpectedly become involved. These changes rarely happen all at once. Instead, they develop gradually as new explanations are added to protect earlier statements. Someone listening casually may never notice. Someone paying close attention begins recognizing that the pieces no longer fit together as smoothly as they once did. Shifting opinions can also reveal useful information, especially when those changes seem driven by convenience, rather than genuine growth. Every person learns, matures, and changes perspectives throughout life. Healthy growth is supported by reflection and experience. Opportunistic shifts often follow a different pattern. A person strongly supports one idea around one group, then confidently supports the opposite idea around another group, without acknowledging the difference. Their beliefs appear flexible, only because approval remains the highest priority. Rather than expressing authentic values, they adapt their opinions to match whoever holds influence in that moment. This constant adjustment creates social comfort in the short term, yet it also reveals uncertainty about personal identity. Observing these patterns across different situations provides valuable insight into whether someone is guided by principles or by immediate advantage. One inconsistency alone should never become proof of dishonesty. Stress affects recall. Fatigue changes concentration. People misspeak, forget details, and accidentally confuse events every day without any intention to deceive. Treating every small mistake as evidence of dishonesty often creates unfair judgments and unnecessary conflict. Wise observers understand that context always matters. They remain curious instead of becoming immediately suspicious. They ask quiet questions, compare information over time, and allow space for reasonable explanations. This patient approach reduces personal bias while increasing the chances of seeing the situation accurately. The strongest evidence usually comes from repeated patterns rather than isolated moments. When similar contradictions continue appearing across different conversations, different situations, and different periods of time, the probability that something important is being hidden becomes much greater. Instead of searching for a single decisive clue, experienced observers collect small pieces of information until a clear picture begins to emerge. They avoid rushing toward conclusions because they understand that careful observation almost always produces better decisions than emotional reactions. This mindset protects relationships built on honesty while also helping reveal behavior that carefully chosen words alone could easily conceal. One of the clearest ways to understand another person's character is to observe how they respond when they do not get the answer they want. Pleasant conversations and shared interests often create the feeling that a relationship is strong, yet real respect becomes easier to recognize when limits appear. Every healthy relationship includes boundaries. They protect time, energy, privacy, values, and emotional well-being. A boundary can be as simple as declining an invitation, asking for personal space, expressing a different opinion, or deciding that certain behavior is unacceptable. These moments may seem ordinary, yet they reveal something extremely important. They show whether someone values you as an independent person or simply values the benefits they receive from you. The answer often becomes visible the moment you politely say, no. Emotionally healthy people understand that every individual has personal limits. They may feel disappointed when a request is declined, yet disappointment does not automatically become anger or resentment. They accept that another person's needs, responsibilities, and priorities deserve the same respect as their own. Instead of trying to force agreement, they adjust, communicate calmly, and continue treating the relationship with dignity. Their respect does not disappear, simply because they did not receive the outcome they hoped for. This kind of response reflects emotional maturity because it recognizes that healthy relationships require choice rather than pressure. People feel safest around individuals who allow honest communication without creating fear of punishment or rejection. Controlling personalities often react very differently. For them, a boundary feels less like a personal decision and more like a challenge to their influence. Rather than accepting the limit, they begin searching for ways to remove it. Sometimes this happens through repeated requests, hoping persistence will eventually wear the other person down. Sometimes it appears through guilt, disappointment, emotional withdrawal, or subtle criticism designed to make someone question their decision. In other situations, the response becomes more direct through anger, blame, or accusations of selfishness. The goal remains the same. They want the boundary to disappear because control feels more comfortable than acceptance. These reactions often reveal deeper habits that remain hidden, while everything goes according to their expectations. One simple word can expose this difference with remarkable clarity. The word no carries enormous psychological value because it tests whether respect exists without agreement. People who genuinely respect others recognize that hearing no is a normal part of life. They understand that different opinions and personal choices strengthen healthy relationships rather than weaken them. They listen, ask respectful questions when clarification is needed, and move forward without turning the conversation into a battle. Someone driven by control often struggles with this process. They interpret refusal as personal rejection or disrespect. Instead of accepting the answer, they continue negotiating, arguing, or creating emotional pressure until resistance becomes exhausting. Their behavior reveals that agreement matters more than mutual respect. Disagreements provide another valuable opportunity to observe boundaries in action. Two people can care deeply about one another while holding completely different opinions. Respect becomes visible when those differences are handled with patience instead of hostility. An emotionally mature person focuses on understanding before trying to persuade. They allow room for disagreement without attacking another person's character. They separate the issue from the relationship, recognizing that different perspectives do not automatically create enemies. Someone with poor boundary awareness often struggles to make this distinction. A simple disagreement quickly becomes personal. The conversation shifts away from solving the issue and toward proving superiority, assigning blame, or demanding complete agreement. Winning the argument becomes more important than preserving trust. Healthy boundaries also reveal themselves through consistency. A respectful person does not honor your limits only when it feels convenient. They continue respecting your choices even when those choices create inconvenience for them. They remember your preferences, value your comfort, and avoid treating your boundaries as temporary obstacles. This steady behavior builds trust because it creates emotional safety. You begin understanding that your opinions, your time, and your decisions will receive the same level of respect during difficult moments as they do during easy ones. Over time, these repeated interactions reveal whether someone truly values the relationship itself or simply values access, influence, and control. The way a person responds after hearing no often tells a far more honest story than everything they said before they heard it. One of the easiest mistakes people make is confusing charm with trustworthiness. Charm creates a strong first impression because it feels warm, exciting, and welcoming. A charming person usually knows how to make others feel comfortable within minutes. They smile easily, maintain engaging conversations, remember small details, and often seem deeply interested in everything you say. These qualities can create an immediate sense of connection, yet they do very little to reveal long-term character. Trustworthiness grows from honesty, consistency, responsibility, and respect over time. Charm can appear within a single conversation. Trust requires repeated experiences that confirm someone behaves with integrity, even when circumstances become difficult. This difference is important because some of the most dependable people you will ever meet may seem quiet or reserved at first, while some of the most persuasive personalities may be skilled at creating emotional closeness long before they deserve your confidence. Manipulation often begins with overwhelming positivity rather than obvious hostility. Instead of creating fear, a manipulative person may create excitement. They give constant compliments, express admiration very early, and speak as though they have found someone truly special after only a short time. The attention feels rewarding because every person enjoys appreciation and acceptance. This early intensity creates a powerful emotional experience that encourages quick trust before enough evidence exists to support it. Psychology describes one form of this behavior as love bombing. It involves showering someone with excessive praise, attention, gifts, or emotional closeness at a speed that feels unusually intense. While genuine enthusiasm certainly exists in healthy relationships, the difference often lies in pace and purpose. Healthy connections grow naturally as people learn about one another. Manipulative connections often rush emotional investment because speed reduces careful observation. Another psychological principle involved in these situations is reciprocity. Human beings naturally feel a desire to return kindness when someone owes them something valuable. This tendency strengthens friendships and creates cooperation throughout society. A sincere compliment often inspires another compliment. A thoughtful favor encourages gratitude. Most of the time, this instinct helps build meaningful relationships. Yet it can also become a tool for manipulation. Someone may offer extraordinary generosity, attention, or emotional support during the beginning of a relationship, creating an unspoken feeling that something should eventually be given back. Once that sense of obligation develops, requests become easier to make. The relationship begins feeling unbalanced because appreciation slowly transforms into pressure. Instead of choosing freely, a person starts responding from guilt or emotional debt. One habit that can protect you from this situation is asking why someone behaves a certain way instead of focusing only on what they do. Attractive behavior always deserves context. A compliment may reflect genuine admiration, or it may be an attempt to gain influence. Generosity may come from kindness, or it may create future expectations. Confidence may reflect healthy self-esteem, or it may hide a strong desire for control. Looking beyond the surface encourages a deeper understanding of motivation. This does not mean becoming suspicious of every positive interaction. It simply means recognizing that behavior always has a purpose. The more clearly you understand that purpose, the more accurately you understand the person behind the behavior. Pauperts always provide stronger evidence than isolated moments. Anyone can appear thoughtful for a day, generous during a special occasion, or supportive while everything remains easy. Lasting character appears through repeated behavior across different situations and over longer periods of time. Someone who constantly alternates between excessive affection and emotional distance, between praise and criticism, or between generosity and unreasonable demands, is revealing a pattern that deserves attention. These shifts often create confusion because each positive moment encourages hope, while each negative moment creates uncertainty. Instead of judging based on one conversation or one emotional experience, patient observers step back and watch how the relationship develops as a whole. The strongest observers understand that real trust grows slowly because genuine character remains stable. They enjoy pleasant conversations without allowing excitement to replace careful judgment. They appreciate kindness while still paying attention to consistency. They welcome new relationships without feeling pressured to make immediate decisions about another person's character. This balanced approach makes it much harder for surface charm to hide hidden motives, because time gradually exposes the difference between sincere care and calculated influence through the steady patterns that every person eventually reveals. Time is one of the most powerful tools for understanding people because it quietly uncovers truths that first impressions often hide. During the beginning of any relationship, most people naturally present their best qualities. They speak carefully, remain patient, and avoid behavior that could create a negative impression. This is a normal part of human interaction because everyone wants to be accepted and appreciated. The challenge begins when those early impressions become the only evidence used to decide whether someone deserves complete trust. Character cannot be measured in a single afternoon or through a few enjoyable conversations. It reveals itself gradually through repeated experiences, changing situations and ordinary moments that receive very little attention. Patience creates the space needed for those moments to appear, allowing reality to replace assumptions with something much more dependable. One reason patience is such a powerful form of protection is that it reduces emotional pressure. Excitement often encourages quick decisions because strong feelings create the belief that everything already makes sense. A new friendship may feel effortless. A romantic connection may seem unusually deep. A business opportunity may appear too perfect to delay. These emotions are genuine, yet emotions alone cannot predict future behavior. Giving time to any relationship allows feelings and facts to develop together, instead of allowing one to overpower the other. As emotions settle, observation becomes clearer. Small habits become easier to notice. Repeated behavior begins forming patterns that were invisible during the excitement of the beginning. This slower approach protects people from making permanent decisions based on temporary impressions. Psychologists sometimes describe this process through the idea of mask fatigue. Maintaining a carefully managed image requires constant attention. A person who hides impatience must continually remember to appear calm. Someone pretending to be generous must continue acting generous even when it becomes inconvenient. A dishonest person must keep track of every version of every story. This ongoing effort demands mental energy, and very few people can sustain it forever. As days become weeks and weeks become months, natural habits gradually replace careful performance. Reactions become more spontaneous. Personal values become easier to recognize. Emotional responses begin reflecting genuine personality, rather than the version someone hoped others would believe. The mask does not usually disappear all at once. Instead, it slips little by little through everyday interactions that seem ordinary on the surface, but reveal extraordinary information beneath. Rushing trust often benefits people whose intentions depend on speed. Someone seeking genuine relationships usually understands that trust develops naturally over time. They feel comfortable allowing another person to ask questions, observe behavior, and build confidence gradually. A person driven by hidden motives often prefers the opposite. They encourage quick decisions, immediate commitment, or rapid emotional closeness before enough evidence exists to evaluate their character fairly. Speed reduces careful thinking because emotions move faster than observation. When everything happens quickly, there is less opportunity to notice contradictions, changing behavior, or uncomfortable patterns. Patience interrupts this process by creating enough distance for judgment to remain clear. Instead of responding to excitement alone, a patient observer allows experience to become the guide. Longitudinal observation, a psychological approach based on watching behavior across extended periods, provides a much more reliable understanding of personality than intense first meetings ever could. One impressive conversation may reveal confidence. Several months of interaction reveal consistency. One generous act may reflect kindness. Repeated generosity during easy and difficult times reflects character. A single disagreement may be explained by stress. The way someone handles disagreement over months reveals emotional habits. Every season of a relationship offers new opportunities to observe how another person responds to success, disappointment, pressure, responsibility, change, and uncertainty. Each experience adds another piece to a much larger picture that no first impression can fully capture. Ordinary moments often become the greatest source of truth because they happen when people are no longer focused on creating a perfect image. Familiarity replaces careful performance. Daily routines become predictable. Emotional reactions become less controlled. Values appear through decisions rather than promises. Respect becomes visible through consistency rather than dramatic gestures. Over time, the distance between words and actions either grows wider or disappears completely. Someone whose behavior remains steady through changing circumstances earns confidence naturally because nothing important changes when attention fades. Someone whose personality shifts according to convenience slowly reveals patterns that careful observation cannot ignore. Time asks every person the same question, and every repeated action becomes part of the answer. One of the most overlooked skills in understanding people is the ability to listen more than you speak. Most conversations become a competition for attention, with each person waiting for an opportunity to share another story, another opinion, or another experience. In that process, valuable information is often missed because people become more focused on responding than observing. A skilled observer approaches conversations differently. Instead of feeling the need to fill every quiet moment with words, they allow the other person room to express themselves naturally. This simple habit creates a surprising result. People usually reveal far more about themselves when they feel heard than when they feel questioned. They begin sharing thoughts, memories, preferences, frustrations, and beliefs without realizing how much information they are providing. Every conversation becomes an opportunity to understand character instead of simply exchanging words. Psychology explains this through the principle of self-disclosure. Human beings naturally enjoy talking about themselves, especially when they believe they are speaking with someone who is genuinely interested. Sharing personal experiences creates emotional comfort and strengthens social connection. When another person listens with patience instead of constantly interrupting, the conversation often becomes deeper without any pressure. Topics gradually move beyond everyday events and begin revealing values, priorities, fears, ambitions, and personal habits. These details provide a much clearer understanding of character than direct questions ever could. Someone may describe how they handled a difficult situation at work, explain a disagreement with a friend, or talk about a recent disappointment. Hidden within those stories are clues about responsibility, empathy, honesty, emotional maturity, and respect for others. The information appears naturally because people usually lower their guard when they feel accepted rather than examined. Active listening takes this process even further. Listening is much more than remaining silent while another person speaks. It requires complete attention. It means noticing the words being used, the emotions behind those words, the pace of the conversation, and the consistency between different parts of the story. Skilled listeners ask thoughtful questions that encourage clarity instead of leading the conversation toward a predetermined answer. They maintain curiosity rather than making quick assumptions. They observe facial expressions, changes in tone, moments of hesitation, and the topics that create excitement or discomfort. Every one of these details adds another layer of understanding. Instead of collecting isolated facts, they begin recognizing patterns that reveal how someone thinks, makes decisions, and views the world. Silence often becomes one of the most powerful tools in any conversation because it creates space that other people naturally feel inclined to fill. After answering a question, many people continue speaking if they sense genuine attention rather than immediate interruption. During those extra moments, they frequently reveal thoughts that were never planned at the beginning of the conversation. They may explain why they made a certain decision, admit uncertainty, express frustration, or describe an experience that shaped their beliefs. These additional details often contain the most valuable insights because they emerge without pressure. Silence communicates patience and confidence. It shows that understanding is more important than controlling the conversation. People who become uncomfortable with every quiet moment often interrupt opportunities for deeper understanding without realizing it. Careful observation also means paying attention to recurring themes instead of isolated statements. A single opinion may reflect a temporary mood, yet repeated stories about conflict, blame, success, gratitude, or disappointment begin revealing stable patterns of thinking. Someone who consistently describes every past relationship as entirely the other person's fault may be showing an unwillingness to accept personal responsibility. Another person who regularly speaks with appreciation about mentors, friends, or coworkers may reveal humility and gratitude as lasting qualities. These patterns appear gradually because they are woven into everyday conversations rather than dramatic confessions. A patient listener notices them without forcing the discussion in any particular direction. The most effective observers rarely make another person feel as though they are being investigated. They gather information through natural conversation instead of intense questioning. Rather than asking a long series of direct questions that create pressure, they encourage open discussion through genuine interest and thoughtful attention. This relaxed approach allows people to speak freely, making their beliefs, values, intentions, and emotional habits easier to recognize over time. Trustworthy understanding grows from patient listening, careful observation, and the willingness to let another person's own words reveal the story that constant talking could easily keep hidden. Trust is one of the most valuable things you can give another person, which is exactly why it should never be given in a hurry. Throughout this video, you have seen that real character reveals itself through actions rather than words, through calm behavior during pressure, through consistent choices over time, and through the way someone treats people when there is nothing to gain. You have also learned that repeated patterns always carry more truth than impressive promises, and that patience allows hidden motives to reveal themselves naturally. The goal is never to become suspicious of everyone you meet. The goal is to become a careful observer who lets time, consistency, and behavior guide important decisions instead of emotion or first impressions. When you stop judging people by what they say and begin understanding them by what they repeatedly do, you make wiser choices about friendships, relationships, and every connection that enters your life. Take a moment to think about your own experiences. Which principle has protected you the most? Was it watching actions instead of words, paying attention during stressful moments, respecting patterns over promises, or simply giving trust slowly instead of too quickly? Share your thoughts in the comments, because your experience may help someone else avoid a painful mistake. If you found this video valuable and enjoyed learning these psychological insights, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more content that helps you understand human behavior, build stronger relationships, and make smarter decisions. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next video.